and more fullness of life to creation through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
The Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I'd like to thank everyone for connecting live to this all very important conference on Laudato Si through the web. Laudato Si is the encyclical of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and it was first published in May 2015. The Holy Father, Pope Francis, appeals in this Laudato Si to all and everybody living on the planet Earth to be involved in the dialogue as it concerns care for Mother Earth. It also emphasizes the reshaping of the future of our planet. The month of May, which we are here now, is very historic. Historic from the point of view that it is marking the 5th anniversary of the encyclical. Activities or chronicles around the Universal Church, here through the dicastery, which is the integral human development arm of the Vatican, as well as Caritas Internationale and Caritas African. The combination of this consortium is meant to mobilize the church communities across the globe to be able to buy into the idea and carry out activities on issues that are related to our environment, as well as how to preserve the Mother Earth, which is really very historic and very important, particularly at this time in the history of the world, where we are necessitated to be able to, reach it through the internet, not the usual conventional physical meetings, thanks to the world which has become a global village today. The team has sifted out of the main theme of the encyclical, which is the Mother Earth, by Caritas Nigeria, is nurturing Mother Earth for fullness of life. That is the major and the main theme for this webinar, which we are holding in May, courtesy of Caritas Nigeria. We have speakers that will be featuring this morning through the day, who are seasoned experts from the academia, church, and civil society. We are also having, at the moment, we have stretched our invitation to about 285 participants. Once again, we welcome you all to this very historic conference. At this juncture, we would like to introduce the 3 speakers that will be speaking to us this morning, stretching to the daytime. The first theme for today is going to be on climate change and ecological conservation. The presentation here will be done by Reverend Father Patrick Ngoyi. Father Patrick Ngoyi is a life fellow of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. This is one of the famous environmental NGOs we have in Nigeria. Father Patrick is a leading actor in environment and social activism. He is the National Episcopal Commission Director for Justice and Peace. He is also the coordinator of Democracy Budget and Monitoring Project of JDPC. He's a member of several human rights organizations and fellow of the 21st Century Trust United Kingdom consultant with several community-based and non-governmental organizations. He's a member of the National Government Committee on the Abolition of Death Penalty. He is also a member of the Presidential Committee for the Assessment and Monitoring of the Implementation of the MDGs and SDGs. He is the Chair and Board of Trustee of the Nigerian Civil Society Coalition and several other responsibilities assigned to him that he has made a mark. Our second speaker today is Dr. John Osanwa. Dr. John will be speaking on climate change and food security. Dr. John is also an environmental specialist. He's an environmental specialist, a specialist on climate change, renewable energy, and climate smart organic agriculture expert with 25 years experience in the USA and Africa. He is a consultant to National Assembly on solid minerals development. He is an expert analyst on climate change and renewable energy on Channels Television and Nigerian Television Authority. The third speaker for today is Dr. Mokhtar Aminu Kano. Dr. Mokhtar Aminu Kano will be speaking on climate change and pollution. He is the Director General, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the famous National Non-Profit Environment Organization, which is the WWF affiliate and BioLife International partner in Nigeria. NCF engages in campaigning, policy advocacy, schools programs, and implementing field projects with communities, government, and companies throughout the country. Dr. Aminu holds a PhD in agricultural ecology. He is a renowned scholar, studied wide and bright and far. He has peculiar interest in the role of faith and strives for environmental sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends of environmental, I would like to, at this stage, take us back to the first presenter. But just before we get into inviting the first presenter to carry on his presentation, I would like to invite the Executive Secretary, JDPC, and the Chair for Church and Society, Very Reverend Father Dr. Uchechukwu Obodochina, to please give us his brief opening remarks. Father Obodochina, you're welcome.
Dear participants, once again, I would like to welcome all of us on behalf of Caritas Nigeria to this great event of landmarking the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si that calls us and challenges us to a radical lifestyle change that will ensure more peace and more humanity around our people. Nurturing the Mother Earth speaks about care and responsibility. And so we are happy you found time to share your time and your excellencies and your skills and experiences with us. We are grateful. The COVID-19 pandemic has made it that it becomes possible in this way we never thought before would take place, this conference, in a form and in a manner that speaks to science and technology of our time. We are very optimistic that these discussions and conversations today will lead us to some concrete steps and action plans that will be essential and beneficial to our people to landmark the 5th anniversary of this historic and land-breaking encyclical of the Holy Father. I am confident that our discussions on climate change and Laudato Si, climate change and food security, climate change and pollution will produce wonderful results that will be translated into concrete actions that will also leave among our people with credible outcomes. I wish all of us a wonderful discussion, a wonderful exchange, and a peaceful interaction among ourselves. Thank you all.
Thank you, Father Obodochina. Father is the Executive Secretary, as earlier mentioned, for JDPC and the Chair for Church and Society, Caritas Nigeria. We are going straight because we do not intend to keep you here longer than necessary. So we will move straight to the first presentation. The first sub-team is going to be addressing from church perspective, and this is to be handled by Very Reverend Father Patrick Ngoyi. It will be on climate change and ecological conservation. I would like to let us know that Father is a life fellow of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation. And this in itself goes a long way to tell us how an environmentalist and pilots the affairs of one of the famous environmental NGO in Nigeria. Father Patrick occupied several positions in the country. He is a developmental actor. He's a human rights worker. He's a member of the organization and the board of several parastatals in the country. As noted earlier, Father Patrick is the National Episcopal Commission Chairman of JDPC. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I welcome with all humility Very Reverend Father Patrick Ngoyi to do his presentation, which is going to run for between 10 and 15 minutes. Hello, Father. Hello, Father Patrick. Okay. Welcome, Father Patrick. Could you just indicate if you are there? Okay.
Hello, Mr. Moderator.
Father, we are listening.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to the organizers of today's seminar. I'm happy as a priest from Ijebode to take part in this wonderful seminar. And I'm glad to share some of the perspective we have on the Pope's intervention on the issues of environment. Now, climate change in Laudato Si. That's a celebration of two major events. One is the 50th anniversary of Mother Earth, and the second is the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si. We look at the celebration of the two events that follows the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi, and then we move from ecological conversion to integral ecology, looking at the climate change within the systemic degradation, and then a few conclusions. Now, celebrating the two anniversary, 50th anniversary of Mother Earth and the 5th anniversary of the encyclical of Pope Francis. The year 2020 is just celebrating that, celebrating the earth to make meaningful and sustainable response to the suffering. The theme for Earth Day 2020 is climate action. The climate crisis which we now face is characterized by a dramatic rise in global temperatures, rising and warming seas, drought, famines, and the forced migration of many people who already live on the margin of society to care for the earth, our common home. Indeed, the anniversary of Laudato Si comes in the footsteps of St. Francis of Assisi. This is a wonderful guy who made the whole world to come to be populated by brothers and sisters. Is where the Pope gets "Praise be to you, my Lord," which in the Canticle of the Creatures reminds us that the earth, our common home, is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. That sister now, says Pope Francis, cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed us. Her cry, united with that of the poor, stirs our conscience to acknowledge our sins against creation. We are moving from that Francis of Assisi to listen to the Pope himself, calling for ecological conversion and integral ecology. Everything, says the Pope, is interconnected. We need an integral ecology or integral human development that recognizes fundamental relationships of a person with God, with himself and herself, with other human beings, and the rest of creation. The Pope insists that we are faced not with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. So social justice and environmental justice need to be addressed together. A true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. We have a responsibility to future generation. So the Laudato Si of Pope Francis challenges current models of development that lead to environmental degradation and calls for greater honesty, lifestyle changes, and commitment by the international community. So we cannot take one aspect of this crisis without considering the others. And therefore, the Pope puts the climate change within the systemic degradation. You can see the number one there, and Prof is around to talk about the pollution, waste, and the throwaway culture. Pollution affects the daily life of people with serious consequences to their health, so much so that it causes millions of premature deaths, while the earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of fields. You can see for yourself. At the root of this situation, we find a throwaway culture, which we have to oppose by introducing models of production based on reuse and recycling, and by limiting the use of non-renewable resources, the circular economy with the 5R. This is a very important dimension the Pope introduces. The climate as a common good. Climate as a common good. Could you imagine what we are saying there? Climate change is a global problem with serious implications: environmental, social, economic, political, and for the distribution of goods. Climate change afflicts entire populations and are among the causes of migration movements. But many of those who possess more resources and economic or political power seem mostly to be concerned with masking the problems or concealing their symptoms. At the same time, our lack of response to these tragedies involving our brothers and sisters point to the loss of that sense of responsibility for our fellow men and women upon which all civil society is founded. So the Pope says, to preserve the climate represent one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our day. The issue of water. I mean, it's wonderful. When you look at the issue of water, entire population, especially children, now we are talking about COVID-19. Where will people find water to wash regularly their hands? The loss of biodiversity. Look, we have lost the biodiversity. Extinction of plants and animal species caused by humanity changes the ecosystem, and future consequences cannot be predicted. The decline in the quality of human life and the breakdown of society, they are all interconnected. The issue of global inequality and the weak responses that we are receiving through the policy makers not adjusting their policy making to the challenges of the time and to the cry of both the earth and the poor. We are facing this issue, says the Pope. Let's fix the earth, our common home. Climate change and environmental degradation are an existential threat to humanity. The transformation towards climate-friendly lifestyle and climate-resilient development cannot wait any longer. It is generally believed, and we are seeing Africa being the most affected continent, even though it is the least responsible for global greenhouse gas emission. To get closer to a decarbonized zero emission economy, the international community as a whole must push through fundamental changes, and we in the church have to take a responsibility for it. The Pope outlined in Laudato Si, what he has outlined there transcend the often narrow and individualist boundaries of contemporary Christian spirituality, consumerist, materialistic economic system, in order to include fruitful relationship with all created things. Our hearts are authentically open to universal communion, says the Pope. Nothing and no one, because everything is related and we human beings are united as brothers and sisters. As you can see, the upcoming of COVID-19 responses offer a unique opportunity to convert ourselves, environmentally, convert harmful policies and subsidies into sustainable and tangible measures addressing the many negative impacts of climate change and environmental degradation. Ecological conversion is a must for all of us. We need to adopt circular economy with the 5R. You can see the 5R there. reduce, refuse, reuse, recover, recycle. Excuse me. This is a challenge to church institutions. To what extent the Justice, Peace and Development Commission and Committee are going to reorganize themselves to ensure that they will become very creative to minimize the effect of the climate change on people's lives, to advocate for innovative public policies that are ecologically sustainable. That's where you see that word innovation. Thinking, creating, putting in place think tank. We need think tank at the federal level. We need think tank in every state. We need think tank in every diocese. Well, this is a very good opportunity for us to come in and discuss what we have as issues facing the climate change. We need to change our lifestyle. We need to think of how we are making use of the goods of this earth. We need to think how we are making use of light and energies. We need to think of how, for example, we are making use of water. Small things, they're part of our daily life. That is what the Pope in Laudato Si is calling us to change. Ecological change is not something outside there. The change we want must start with you and me. Mr. Moderator, thank you for the opportunity to share these few ideas.
Thank you very much. This is great. We'll keep our questions to the appropriate time when it is time for questions and responses. We will now move on to the second presenter. The second presentation is from the perspective of the academic. It is on climate change and food security. This presentation will be done by no other person than Dr. John Osonwa. Dr. John is an expert in environment, renewable energy, climate change, organic agriculture. He is most appropriate for this conference. I welcome you, Dr. John, to our webinar. Hello, Dr. John. He's joining us soon. You see the one there?
Dr. Shadi, if you're there, welcome back again. We have to go to establish a better connection. But if you listening to me, can you just readjust your camera well? You are off the focusing. I can see you.
Is that Dr. John, please? Hello, Dr. John Osonwa, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor. Yes, you're welcome.
Yes, you can hear me. Yeah, the mic was muted, so that's why you couldn't hear me. From your end. Okay. You can hear me now.
Yes, doctor, you are good to go. You have the floor.
Yes. Do you have my PowerPoint presentation?
Okay, doctor, just go ahead.
You can share the screen.
Can you share it on the screen?
I sent it to Dr. Ekpa.
Is it possible for you
Can you hear me?
To share your screen? Yes, we can hear you. just because of time, you could just go ahead with the presentation while Doctor brings up your PowerPoint. Are you able to do
Very
that,
well.
Doctor? Thank you.
Yes, I can. I will not be able to share the images now, but I can talk about some of the issues.
Beautiful.
So
just
let me
go ahead. Yes, please.
Let me proceed. I'm pleased to be presenting to you. As I said, climate change is a very important issue which impacts all aspects of our lives. And today we're focusing on food security. I thought I should begin by dissecting the topic, climate change and food security. The first thing we look at, what is food that provides nutrients, energy for activity,
Hello, Dr. John.
Even to boost our immune system.
Dr. John, could you just try to go close to your microphone?
Disease. So food is very essential to the functioning of the human being. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Doctor. Yes, now better.
Hello?
It's better. It's better now, Doctor. Speak on, let's see.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, Doctor.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes, you can.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Did you just mute him?
No, if you like to left.
Hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, faintly, but we can go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you. Speak on, Doctor.
You can hear me now. Yes, the first thing that we look at is the concept of food. What is food? When we're talking about food, climate change and food security. And food, we understand, is something that provides nutrients to the body, which is essential for the functioning of the body, for the immune system, to have energy to function. And what is food security? United Nations Committee on on World Food Security, all people, food security, availability of food, access to the food, and utilization and stabilization and stability of food. So when we look at availability of food, in order to assess whether your food you have to look at the production of food.
Hello, Doctor.
How
Hello.
much and what types of food are available to you?
Yep.
What is
Yeah, who has his number? Sending it.
distribution mechanism is in book 2. Are you able? Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, doctor, yes, if you can hear me, we're just wondering if we could just take 10 minutes off. Maybe your internet access could improve, and then we'll get back to you so we move on to the third presentation. Is that okay by you, doctor?
That's fine.
Is that okay by you? So we actually can't hear you. And we're just wondering if you could just pause for a while, and then we'll get back to you. Have you sent him a text message? I don't have his.
I said that is fine. Very well, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay. We are sorry. I think some little challenges from the end of our speaker. We also like to appeal to all participants to please type their questions on the chat platform. We will get response as we move ahead. These measures will help us to save time. We'd like to move on to the third presenter, Dr. Motari Aminu Kanu. Doctor, are you there? Doctor, are you there?
I'm trying, yeah, okay, I've unmuted myself now. Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, please, can you try to remove your screen so that I can try to share from my own screen? Then if it doesn't work, we can come back to yours.
Okay, doctor, thank you.
Thank you. I think it says host has disabled attendee screen sharing. So is it possible to enable it again?
Just try again one more time, let's see.
Okay. It still comes, okay, yeah, it's fine now, I think.
Yes.
You can see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet, doctor.
Not yet. Okay.
Let's share, hence we can hear him because of time. Okay.
Yeah, okay, because of time, then maybe just share yours and I will speak to it.
Okay, beautiful.
All right, thank you. So if you turn it to...
Dr. Speak on.
Okay, the Executive Secretary, JDPC, our fellow, Reverend Father John Patrice Ngoyi, who is a fellow of our organization. It's great to meet both of you, and thank you to Caritas for the opportunity for NCF to participate in this really wonderful conference. So I'm going to talk about the climate crisis and pollution from the point of view of a civil society organization like yourself. And I want to start by quoting somebody who said, we humans, we are the only animal that puts things into the earth that the earth cannot digest. All other animals, when they put things in the earth, eventually the earth digests them. But humans have this unique poor quality that we put it in, and it's difficult for the earth to digest. So putting things that could be of harm to the environment within the environment is a simple definition of pollution. And climate change itself is caused by pollution. And I'll show you that. So the first slide tries to define two ways of looking at climate change. Some people say global warming and some people say climate change. I think they are aspects of each other. Global warming is just the increase in average temperature over time, and it happens in the atmosphere and is caused by greenhouse gases. So the warmer it gets, the more experience of global warming you get. But climate change is beyond that. Climate change includes that, but also includes extreme temperatures and extreme precipitation. So it can be too much rainfall, too little rainfall, too hot or too cold. And so climate change is broader. If you go to the next slide, both of them are caused by a similar thing. And these are pollutants. Those pollutants are either existing anyway in the atmosphere or there are new things introduced to the atmosphere. The main ones are the ones I've shown and the ones that are sort of bigger blobs on this slide: carbon dioxide, methane, nitric oxides. Those are the main ones, but of them all, carbon dioxide is the largest, most ubiquitous. Everybody from everywhere in the world emits a lot of it, and it is the main culprit, people think, to what we are having. And that's why people talk about carbon footprint, carbon dioxide and methane. The sources of carbon dioxide pollution, which causes this, I'm not sure if you can read the slide, the tiny print under each cycle, but it's mostly from fossil fuels, so crude oil, coal, and such stuff. That is the main source of where carbon dioxide pollution comes. Methane, the main source is from agriculture, natural gas, and some other industrial processes. So those are the main sources of pollution that cause climate change. Next slide shows what sort of activities, what sectors in terms of human activity is contributing more to this. And it shows that energy is a major culprit, but close to energy, very close by, is agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So what we do in agriculture in terms of using chemical fertilizer, in terms of slashing and burning, and deforestation, in terms of other changes that we bring about to land use, is almost as big a contributor as energy. Then there are others, of course, like transportation, other bits of industry, other sources of energy, and so on. But if you go to the next slide, the next slide shows us some of the impacts. Yeah, some of the impacts. I'm not sure I can see this much from the slide, but maybe you can see it better in you. This is what the climate risks and the extreme events that are happening as a result of climate change and some of the impacts it is bringing in terms of acidifying the ocean, in terms of warming the ocean itself, and therefore causing sea level rise, in terms of flooding, in terms of drought, and so on. And the next slide will show you some of the more impacts you are more familiar with, which is bushfires. Next slide, please. Yes, so bushfires, coastal erosion, urban flooding, displacement, drought, and so on. So let's step it back and say, what is really happening in a place like Nigeria? If you go to the next slide, next few slides will show you. The next one will show you some of the graphic impacts of climate change that we know. One of the major ones is the shrinking of the Lake Chad, which is in large measure attributed to climate change. From the 1960s to now, it is sort of shown that the Lake Chad has shrunk by between 5 to 8%, to only about 5 to 8% of its original size. And you can see graphically the satellite picture showing you how the water body has receded over time, and the Lake Chad is now a very poor shadow of itself. And that has lots of consequences. The next slide will show you that because of climate change as well, that we've had more drought and more flooding. You all know about this cyclical and periodic drought that we get in different parts of the country, and the flooding, which comes almost every year now. But particularly, if you remember, in 2012, we had one of the most historic incidences of flooding across the whole country. So all of these impacts have human costs, as we know. And if you start from the next slide, you could see that they lead to lots of things. The shrinking of the Lake Chad, the periodic drought in the Northeast, some bit of flooding and other things. All of those impacts of climate change are partly exacerbating the insurgency that we have there and have contributed to the cause of the insurgency itself. We have farmer-herders clashes, which happen everywhere now in the country, which are again as a result of resource conflict coming partly from climate change. And then the cattle rustling and other things. So if you go to the next slide, it shows you that at least as of 2018, this is the period I think when this was taken, that the number of refugees in the world was about 28 million people, and 17.2 million of that are due to weather-related events. No, 16.1 million to weather-related events, and only 10.8 million or thereabouts as a result of other causes such as conflict or geophysical causes. So things like storms, floods, droughts, and other things are what are causing almost 2/3 of the emergencies that are throwing people into poverty, into suffering across the world, and therefore necessitating more work from humanitarian and social organizations such as Caritas. And on the right-hand side of that is looking particularly in Nigeria and Borno in the Northeast in particular, where conflicts, like we said, including the Boko Haram thing, has led to more than 20,000 deaths, more than 3.3 million displaced, and a loss in monetary terms of almost $6 billion US. The next slide is bringing things to the topic, to the time we are now, about how climate change is also implicated in the spread of infectious diseases. So air pollution. And climate change not only is caused by air pollution, but it exacerbates air pollution as well, and therefore responsible for some respiratory diseases arising from air pollution or allergies. Also some diseases that are waterborne like malaria, dengue fever, cholera, and so on. Heart diseases and many other means. Next slide. Still going on this theme of infectious diseases, shows how climate change is making mosquitoes and the diseases they carry to be more prominent due to increasing temperature, increasing precipitation, and changing the environment in a way that favors the mosquito, which is a vector of so many diseases. I'll go quickly to the next two slides. The next one is just showing how infectious diseases emerge, and that some of the both indirect and direct drivers include climate change, include deforestation, which again is partly affected by climate change, but also include other factors like our relationship with the environment. So those are the drivers that change the human environment and make infectious diseases of animal sources to be more prominent and to have pandemics like what we have now. And the next slide shows the emergence of an outbreak of animal originated outbreaks of infectious diseases over the last 40 years. And you can see how frequent it is becoming. You can see many of them from, in fact, in the last 20 years alone, we've had about 5-6 different outbreaks of these infectious diseases, from SARS to MERS to Zika to Ebola and so on. But all others, including things like HIV and so on, are infectious diseases that are coming and will be with us longer, and partly because the climate is changing and making animals and humans become more in contact with each other, and therefore the transfer of those diseases between wildlife, domestic animals, and human beings becoming more common. Next slide shows that one of the direct impacts of climate change is also direct heat. So you can see some of those advisories from the Lagos state government on how to beat the heat wave. But heat waves have killed a lot of people in Nigeria, in Europe, and many other places. And cold waves in other parts of the world have also killed a lot of people. Next slide shows that climate change leads to sea level rise, which also causes pollution of the sea because it leads to algal blooms. It leads to the death of some of the animals there. So not only does it cause sea level rise, it causes acidity in the ocean because the carbon dioxide dissolves and becomes carbonic acid, and it also makes the sea water warmer. So these are all things that lead to coastal erosion, flooding, death of species, coral bleaching, and other stuff. Next slide pictorially shows you some of the problems, from dead fishes coming up at shore to houses and dwellings falling off the cliff in coastal areas, to erosion in other places, and so on. So just to round up, I think this is the setting in which Laudato Si came in, and it's been groundbreaking, I think, since it emerged 5 years ago, because His Holiness, I think, in Laudato Si has really given recognition and credibility to the science and made things much more plain and okay. If there were any climate deniers who didn't want to be led by science, His Holiness cleared that confusion. And this is a direct quote from paragraph 23 of Laudato Si. But also, the second bit of that says that, look, if you want to address climate change, you shouldn't just address its impacts or its symptoms. You must address the root causes, which is our lifestyle and our unsustainable production and consumption methods. So humanitarian and social organizations, civil society organizations like us, should not just be content with providing palliatives or reducing poverty, we should also look at the root causes of poverty and address them. And if you go to my second to the final slide, it shows that if we want to change, this change must happen at 3 levels. Next slide, please. It must happen at the level of the individual, so each of us must change our attitude and behavior, and that's what Laudato Si can help us do. But it must also happen at institutional level. Each of us belong to one institution, one organization or the other. So we all must change. Our organization, Nigerian Conservation Foundation, must walk the talk when we try to advocate for against climate change, just like Caritas and all the others. So we must change at individual level, at organizational level, but those two are not enough. We must also change at systemic and structural level by changing the paradigm. And I think I will close by my final slide, saying that to me, the takeaway message from Laudato Si, especially on climate change, pollution, and the other, is the way it shows the inextricable link between poverty and healing the earth, and environment, and climate change. Cry of the earth and cry of the poor. You cannot address one without the other. So happy anniversary for Laudato Si, and let's redouble our efforts to make sure that we make a change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Mokhtari Aminu Kanu. Again, Dr. Mokhtari Aminu Kanu is the Director General, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. You will agree with us that he has done justice to this topic. Doctor, please just stay tuned. We will get back to you when we get to the session of question and answer. We would like to go back to Dr. John to see if his internet connectivity has improved. And then you just quickly present for 5 minutes so that we move on to the next stage. It's not there. It's not there. Maybe his internet is really bad. Can somebody just give him a call, please? Let's just see. You can reach him on phone. While we are waiting for Dr. John, we'll go back to our participants and see if we have questions. You could just indicate by, sorry? Is he there? Okay. Okay. There's a question from Joseph Uzoma Okamoke. The question reads thus: how true is the assertion that with the outbreak of the latest COVID-19 pandemic, nature or the environment is fighting back or rejecting man's tendency to manufacturing biological weaponry to harm creation? The question is open. The speakers could make input and respond to this. If there is any participant who also feels very endowed, you can contribute. It's open. It's all about us and how to improve our environment. Is she responding? She's using her phone. Maybe I should unmute. Okay, Grace. Yeah. Grace, are you there? Okay, Grace, you can speak. Hello, Grace. Okay. Yeah. Okay, who is ready now? Michael? Okay, Michael, yes.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Michael. Just pull up from your microphone slightly.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you for all the presentations. The question for essentially saying we've identified the causes of climate change, and the church also has advocated for many years across different publications of the dangers of climate change. I want to know, in the face of climate change related solutions like renewable energy, what are we doing as a church, Father Patrick, and also for the Conservation Foundation? What are you also doing with solutions like renewable energy to mitigate the use of fossil fuels, to reduce, remember the 5 R's we talked about, the reduction of fossil fuels and replacing the energy mix with renewable energy. I'd like to know what the response is from the church's perspective and what the Conservation Foundation is also doing. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, Michael. Father Patrick, are you there? Would you like to respond to Michael's question? Okay. And Dr. Mokhtari, if you also want to respond, you could.
Okay.
Okay, Father Patrick?
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a very wonderful exchange. The first question from Joe Kamuke, how true it is that nature is fighting against the excesses of human beings. You know, Joe, it's good you asked that question because there are many religious groups that are coming up to say COVID-19 is God punishing the world for their sins. I really don't want Catholics to fall, I mean any believer, to fall into that kind of slogan. We are facing nature. There is no issue, no discussion, no argument on the fact that we have gone too far in tampering with nature. We have abused nature. There is certainly a way nature would say, I can only carry this much. And if you would have seen yourself watching CNN or Al Jazeera, you see how many birds, how many animals are feeling freer. You can see how, for example, the ozone layers or the pollution in big cities like Los Angeles, New York, Brussels, and Paris, how pure the air is becoming. So there is certainly an issue here that we have gone that far. We're too far. We need to readjust. I have no question about that. But I don't want to say that God is punishing us. That's the number one thing. Then the second one, Michael, if you go to the Vatican today, you will see for yourself how much of solar energy is being used by the Vatican. And I think this is a clarion call. The Catholic Secretariat, the dioceses, the JDPC offices, we should take the lead in renewing our sources of energy. Well, I could speak for myself in Djibouti, for example. We are more and more using solar energy. And I think the church in many places is responding. But it's a challenge we all need to take. That's all I have to say, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Father Patrick. Who is? I think this is, the response is apt and it addresses the question. Is it Francis? Yes, Francis, you have the floor. The question is there. Okay. Francis is asking, do you not think we have lost it when it comes to environment by not having any effective and concrete ways to reach the young in primary and secondary on environmental justice and integral ecology, since they can be the greatest agents of lifestyle changes for the future of mother. This is from Francis. He is actually trying to say that we've lost it, hence the young ones in the primary and secondary school are not carried along or given the basics of what to do as it concerns our environment. Again, for the
Mr. Moderator, yes, Mr. Moderator, this is a forum that is called by the Catholic space. We have confession. Confession is a space where we acknowledge that we have failed. But we have failed does not mean we should stay within our failure. We should come out of it. I mean, we used to talk about personal sins. St. John Paul II came with structural sin. Pope Francis has come in with ecological sin. The issue is, once you confess, you acknowledge a sin, you confess it, you must do penance, you must repair it. And that's why this conference is all important. We must acknowledge that there is a way, there is a lifestyle in our parishes, in our dioceses, in our institution that is not ecologically sustainable. Then we've got to change it. I would say, yes, we got it wrong. Yes, we failed. But then it is never too late to mend. Now is the time. And you and I, us, together with the Pope, as the Pope says, we can fix it. So let's fix the world together. As I said, on one condition, let's sit down and think. Let's sit down and plan. Let's sit down and put in place mechanism for monitoring and following up on whatever decision we take. That's the challenge ahead of us. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, sorry, I've been trying to unmute myself and contribute by responding to some of the questions. So thank you for allowing me to do that now. First one about really nature fighting back. I think I will agree definitely with Reverend Father Ngoyi that I think it will be the wrong attitude if we see what is happening with pandemics, floods, and other things as nature fighting back. I wouldn't go into the religious side of it, but even just from the professional side, I think what you can say with all of those impacts of our unsustainable use of the environment is that these are really warning signs for us to really become more sustainable in our lives at all our different levels. So quite okay, we are facing a lot of challenges as far as our environment is concerned, and that is coming to affect not just the earth, but back on ourselves as part and parcel of the earth. But we should see it more as a warning bell to actually change course and be more sustainable. The second question about what we are doing about renewable energy as an organization. As an organization, we are trying very hard to walk the talk, as I said. So we have some limited solarization of some of our facilities, in some of our offices, and in some of the work we do with communities and others. We also do, like Caritas does, try to make energy use more efficient in general by using low energy bulbs, by giving out fuel efficient stoves to rural people for cooking so that they could use less food than others. But I think the issue is beyond any single organization. This could only be pilots. This could only be a demonstration of how things can go. And this could only be taking leadership. I think each and every person has to take responsibility, but most importantly, all of us as civil society, the church, NGOs, labor, all other civil society, we have to really put our strengths together and lobby and put pressure on our governments, put their feet to the fire, because they are the ones that could do massive scale up things of this. And one of the things we are doing, which I'm very proud of, is that as an additional component of the lobbying that NCF and others are doing, in the post-COVID recovery plan that the federal government is developed, there are at least two aspects of it. One is to ramp up solar energy in households. So they claim they will try to create more avenues to do that. And secondly is the planting of trees. So these are part of the government's plans. They have also demonstrated by doing a few things in the past, but I think we together need to put strength together and get both government, companies in private sector and individuals who look up to us to do the action, in addition to what we do to show leadership. The final one is about whether we've lost it and whether, yes, I think there are people who have despaired and said, look, we are a lost generation as far as the environment is concerned, and maybe the hope only pins on the future generation. I'm not one of those, because I think there is still time. The window is narrow, but there is still a window for us to change course and change things. But we can't do it alone. It's an intergenerational thing, like Laudato Si said. It has to be the combination of the young and the old. And as NCF, we are really working a lot with schools. We have many school conservation clubs all across the country. We've just completed a national arts and essay competition on the environment to address these things, but we all need to do more. We need to catch them young, because
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Aminu Kano. Caritas Nigerian look forward to engaging Nigerian Conservation Foundation on how to improve our environment. So we will be reaching you shortly to further this collaboration. I would like to also invite Marianne Kese to make some contributions on what we have been doing as our own contribution.
Yes, I can see some hands are still being raised, but I just want to quickly respond to the question that asks, what is the church in Nigeria doing? I know for the parties I've tried to mention what the church is doing. We have also been trying to work in line with Laudato Si for ecological conversion and to ensure that there is renewable without the we try to limit it to the barest minimum by adopting a workflow system for our requests and approvals. So for instance, all requests made by staff for financial requests, liquidations, application for leave, timesheets, all of them is done through a system of workflow that is done online. And your supervisors and approvers can approve it wherever they are in the world by simply logging onto the workflow system and approving it. And that goes through until you get either reimbursed or you are paid. So that does not involve the use of any paper. So that is the use, that's part of our contribution to ensuring ecological conservation and sustainable energy. Also in our programming, because we do a lot of humanitarian programming, in most of our humanitarian programming, we also distribute renewable, we also distribute energy saving stoves, energy saving cooking stoves, which is part of ensuring that our beneficiaries do not continue depleting the environment through going to cut down trees to burn as firewood. So in this one, just a little bit of tree can do the job of what a whole bunch of firewood can do. So we try to share that amongst our beneficiaries, especially those that are engaged in food security program. We've also been able to set up solar water facilities in a lot of the communities in our WASH programs, that's in our water sanitation and hygiene programs. So like we've set up in the last 3 years, we've set up over 20 solar water facilities, especially in the Northeast and also here in Abuja, that have served IDPs, returnees, and host communities in the most vulnerable places. We've also distributed a lot of solar lanterns, especially to girls and women, so that in the night, in those conflict-affected areas, if they want to go out, they can use that instead of using lanterns. So this solar energy, the solar lantern, they simply just recharge it with the sunlight, and they can use it throughout the night or light up to use in reading. In a similar vein, even in our intervention with the refugees in Cross River State, we've set up solar lighting in the refugee camps. All these are efforts of the church in collaboration with our partners who are supporting us to ensure that we tap into environmental conservation and use of renewable energy so that we do not continue contributing to the depletion of our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nkese, for that well-articulated position of the contributions of Caritas Nigeria to support the rejuvenation of our environment as an answer to the clarion call by the Holy Father. Participants, I'd like to let you know at this juncture that we have Dr. John back. And Doctor, if you are there, could you just take 3-4 minutes to just quickly go through your point, because we are running out of time. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. I believe you have my PowerPoint presentation now.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Can you project that?
Yes, you can see the fruits there you have for us. Great.
Can you project it so that we will be able to quickly run through that? Yeah.
It's projected.
Maybe you've muted us. Check.
Wonderful.
Not touching, unless that's.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And we also have your presentation. Are you good to go? Okay. Are we okay?
Is he up?
Yes.
Have you unmuted? Have you unmuted?
Yes.
Is it there? Dr. John, are you there? Yeah. Are you there, Doctor?
Okay. I wanted to.
Go to the first slide. Just go to the first slide. Go to the next slide.
Okay, you could just be more in on, I'm sure, if they are seeing the screen. Yeah, I'm trying. Just enter. Good, good. Just not too fast. Okay, participants, if you can hear us, we are actually displaying the slides presentations of Dr. John. You could just follow us through. If you can hear us, the slide on there is dissertation of our topic. Move on.
Next slide.
Move on. He has given a brief definition of what food is. Nutrients to our body. What is food security? He also sees food security. He defines it from the point of view of the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, which means that all people have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. He looked at and stability. Great, Doctor. Move on. Visual illustration of the 4 components of food security. He looked at food security from the point of view of availability, access, utilization, and stability, as noted earlier. Dr. John, are you there? Okay, he took a closer look. Beautiful, yes. Yes, Doctor, go.
Okay, you were doing so well with it.
Thank you.
Continue from where we stopped.
Thank you, just continue. We can't be better than you, the author.
So we look at the issue of availability of food and the things that affect availability, production, distribution, exchange. So as you said, I will move quickly along. Let's move on to the next one.
Next one.
So we'll look at utilization and access. And those are the things that you must consider in assessing whether a particular community or nation or region is food secure.
Okay.
If you're not hearing, if I'm not hearing, let me know.
Go to the next slide. Let's see if we can quickly run through it, if they are hearing us. Yeah. Okay, still on the 4 components, so you can move on to the next slide. The last, okay, types of food security, type of food security insecurity. He looked at this from the point of view of chronic food insecurity, transitory food insecurity, seasonal food insecurity. Seasonal food insecurity deals with a condition of food insecurity that reoccurs predictably following the cyclical pattern of seasons. Now we are just flipping through the slides. We are not professionals in this area, just that you can key and follow what is going on. What is climate change? He defines climate change as the long-term change in weather patterns, especially increases in temperature and storm activity, regarded as a consequence of the greenhouse effect. Climate change, again, he said, is also defined as the observed century-scale rise in the average temperature of the Earth's climate system and its related effects. Multiple lines of scientific evidence show that the Earth's climate system is warming. And then he looked at, he asked, what is global warming? Global warming here, global warming, the 5 gases which cause climate change and global warming. He looks at them, as noted earlier, under greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases here absorb heat energy emitted from Earth's surface and re-radiate it back to the ground. In this way, they contribute to the greenhouse effect, which keeps the planet from losing all of its heat from the surface at night. The concentration of various greenhouse gases in the atmosphere determines how much heat is absorbed by the atmosphere and re-radiated back to the surface. He looked at human activities, especially fossil fuel combustion, since the Industrial Revolution are responsible for steady increase in the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The 5 most significant gases are presented here. 1, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. Look at other sources of carbon dioxide. You can see them there. These are sources that cause lots of pollution, from those heavy-duty trucks to the gasoline generator, and then even to electricity power supply. We could get the environment polluted. Sobering facts about our carbon dioxide emission. He looked at the concentration of carbon dioxide at the Minor Low Research Station in Hawaii surpasses the symbolic 400 parts per million. This is scientific, but we are just flipping through so that you could see the great job that Dr. John has done here. This will be shared with you as we progress in this fight against our environment. Proof of increasing carbon dioxide concentration in the Earth's atmosphere. Here he has a chart that explains scientifically how this can be, addressed and arranged. He looked at the second, which is methane, and then he also looked at human resources. Here he looked at rice cultivation, livestock farming, the burning of coal and natural gas, biomass, combustion, and decomposition in landfalls. All these are activities that, if properly enhanced by human, our environment would largely be improved and enhanced. Sources of methane, there we can see also, those are what? Cattle? Yes. Okay, these are cattle in the cow dung, and we all know the importance of what this is to the human environment, the benefits that are associated with this. Surface level ozone. The next most significant greenhouse gas is surface or low level ozone. And here he also looked at the fact that the primary human-driven source of surface O2 is in photochemical reactions involving carbon monoxide, such as in smoke, like you can see it there, smoke, and then also vehicles, perhaps when the roads are really very crowded. I'm sure this road here will not be anywhere around us here, even though we've also got very good roads network that has improved. But you can see that these surfaces or sources could really be of great help.
Industrial emissions.
Okay, yeah. That's The fourth is the nitrous oxidized and fluorinated gases. Other gases produced by industrial activity that have greenhouse properties include nitrous oxide and fluorinated gases. The latter includes hydrofluorocarbons. Gas flaring results, like you can see in the pollutions that you will always experience in areas around the Niger Delta, Ugele, Erimokokore, name them. Water vapor. Water vapor here, Dr. John says it says is the most potent of the greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere. The amount of water vapor in the atmosphere is set by air temperatures. The warmer the surface, the greater the evaporation. Of water vapor. You can see there he has presented an illustration visually there on the effect of water. Incandescent bulbs. Not surprisingly, because of these same factors and its strategic geographical location, Nigeria is the country that will be most affected by climate change in Africa. He calls us to be, or that we are already bearing witness to how Nigeria will be affected, but it is only the tip of the iceberg, unless we take drastic measures to sustain these steps. These are the measures that Caritas Nigeria are already taking the front lead in taking. Thank you very much, Dr. John. I think the participants are glued to this presentation. We owe you so much, and we are learning so much from this. So, no, 90. That's why I summarized.
So, go to the questions.
Okay. Can I still just one? Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor.
You can go to how climate change affects our food security in the front.
Yeah, but you see the one. Okay, doctor, just speak on, and if you have some kind of closing remarks to summarize your presentation.
Okay, if you can hear me, yeah. If you can hear me, let me summarize. Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor, go ahead.
Essentially, I was highlighting how we cause climate change, but climate change impacts our food security in a number of ways. The first one is that because of the warming of the oceans, it leads to flooding all over the place. And when you have rising sea levels and flooding, you've seen what happens. It destroys our lives, our livelihoods. It destroys our farmlands and disrupts the food supply chain, because sometimes the bridges are not there, the roads are flooded. You saw what happened in Lokoja a few years ago when the bridge was completely inundated with water and people could not move. That's one of the consequences of climate change on our food security. The other impact is that it leads to desertification, which dries up the land so much that it becomes infertile. You cannot plant on the land because of climate change. Climate change also leads to climate refugees, because when the land is no longer arable and capable of supporting life and livestock, people now begin to migrate to other areas. You're seeing that with the herdsman and farmers' clashes. That is a direct result of climate change because there's not enough land. Desertification is encroaching into the land in the north. That's a consequence of climate change. So that reduces the amount of land that can be used to cultivate food. And that leads to food insecurity. Another thing that happens very importantly is that the water systems, because of climate change, also dry up. Lake Chad has dried up by 90%. A lot of our rivers and streams we used to bathe in have all dried up because of climate change. That also threatens our food security because water is essential to life. Water is essential to agriculture. If you don't have water, you cannot have the same amount of food supply. So these are some of the impacts we have from climate change. And of course, the final one is that it leads to insecurity. National security is threatened. You see people migrating from one region to the other. Sometimes they are from a different background. Sometimes they are looking for the same resources you begin in Africa over the years. So those are the main impacts. Climate change affects mobility and mortality in Africa because you have crop failures, it leads to famine, it leads to diminished yields, and these things have a way of affecting the well-being of the population.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that summary. We will quickly move on to the session of question and answer, which to a large extent has been addressed as we were progressing during this presentation. Except if someone still have, who is raising their hand? Okay, Ireti, are you ready? Okay. Yes, Ireti? Where is she, Mara? Yeah, I've done that.
Are you here?
Yes, speak up. Just introduce yourself and go ahead with your question.
She needs to be unmuted.
I'm Ireti Disu.
Yes, please.
From JDPC, Jebo Day in Ogun State.
We are all ears, Ireti.
Yeah, my question goes to Dr. John. I know he's an academician from the university, and we are talking about food security. My concern is what are they doing with the university students, especially those in the agricultural department? Is this still classroom teaching, or they do more of practical farming? So that when we talk about food security, those in the university, they should not be thinking of, okay, when they're out of university, they are going for white collar job. They should be thinking of how to produce food and to make sure that, like the 4 components of agriculture, of food security they mentioned, access, stability, and all sorts of things, so that we have enough food to eat in the country. My question is, so the academicians in the university, what are they doing with the young ones, the youths especially? They need to redesign the course outline, the curriculum, so that they do more of practical farming, so that when they go out, they know that even from farming, they can earn a lot of living. Thank you.
Thank you, Ireti.
Can I answer that now? I have to wait.
Maybe what we just do, Doctor, we just take the questions if we have a few more, and then we just get the response and move on. We are running. Adeshola, are you there? Doctor, just note the question down.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I am pleased to be here, and I really commend the organizers of this event. It is timely. Yes, my name is Adeshola Afariogun. I'm the Executive Director of African Foundation for Environment and Development. I'm also the Secretary of Civil Society Coalition, on sustainable development in Ogun State. And I am also the convener of COVID-19 platform in Adulta local government. Now, looking at climate change. Yeah. So climate change actually affects everybody, irrespective of your age, race, and religion and all that. As such, all efforts in mitigating the effect of climate change should be all-encompassing and multi-stakeholder in nature. I now want to ask, what is the Caritas and the Christian body doing to engage other religions, amongst others, in the climate change actions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joseph, you can just ask your question while we appeal to our presenters to just be glue and take the questions down. Joseph, are you there? I can see your hand. Doctor, come here, please. Actually, it's control. Use the rest. Go to Joseph. I can see his hand. If you can't get Joseph, or go to Father Joshua. Yes, to the left. Yes, Father Joshua. Yes.
Unmute Father Joshua.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Unmute him.
Hello, Father Joshua. You have the floor. Yes, Father Joshua. Can you unmute him? His hand is up.
Father Joshua.
Yes, see him there.
Not become okay. Joshua.
Joshua. Yes, yes.
Hello, Father Joshua. Can you speak?
Yes, I guess you can hear me now.
Yes, Father.
Okay, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, had said that nature does not negotiate. And I quite agree with him, because the justice of nature has no mercy. Except when it comes to the realm of the church, we begin to talk about God is merciful. Now, in the light of this, don't you think that it is wise to have a vademecum on the environment for all strata of society, especially from the classroom and Sunday school classes? I think this will go a long way, so that from the grassroots, the young ones can begin to know more about the environment and see how they can flaunt this as they grow up.
Thank you very much, Father Joshua.
Father Joshua, what did you say we should have from the grassroots?
A vademecum, a go with me, like a penny catechism.
Like catechism for the environment. Thank you very much, Father. Chooks, I can see your hand. Are you ready to make your contribution or your question? That's Chooks there. Calm down. Have you? Yes, no? There is Chooks. Yes, Chooks, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Chooks.
Yes, please. I must appreciate the presenter, Dr. John, on that wonderful paper. Just like I mentioned on my question earlier, I'm contributing from Abuja. I asked and made a contribution to that presentation, asking, what is the role? Because this kind of presentation is incomplete to my own personal opinion. It's incomplete without the reference to what we are experiencing in our farming system in Nigeria today. The relationship between our farmers and herders, in line with the insecurity that he mentioned in his paper. Because we discovered that with the continuous crisis between these two big partners, there will be a very big insecurity in our system. So I think doctor should also note it, and we all here should also note it, that farmer-herders relationship is very important and is very key. That avert all the crises that we have, we also make sure that we have enough security for our food system in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chooks. We'll just appeal to those whose hands are up to just keep it very brief, because we do not intend to go beyond one.
Matthew is here.
He has spoken.
Matthew
He has
is
not.
here.
Okay, Father Matthew. I'm muting.
You come up with your spoken before. Other questions.
Yeah. There is also, see? Okay. Speak on, Father Matthew.
You have to click on Ben. You've not done it.
I have.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father, we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah, Father Matthew from JDPC in Sukadas. Yeah, talking about food insecurity, the degradation of the environment, as well as the destruction of the soil fecundity through excessive use of plastics, which unfortunately in Nigeria, are not properly disposed of, contributes greatly to food insecurity. And I want to ask if you think it is possible, to have a legislation in Nigeria that, can, as we have in some developed countries, that, can reduce the use of plastic, like these pure water bags and, the cellophane bags that, people use when you enter something like a ShopRite as a way of a medium of advertisement. They give you, when you buy things, they just give you a cellophane bag. So is it possible to have such a legislation here in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah.
Just like a law. Yeah. We will just take. Do we still have some hands? We are actually out of time.
Okay. Friday. Hello.
Yes, Friday. Hassan. Are
Yes.
you there?
Good afternoon, moderator and Reverend Fathers. I'm Friday Al Hassan. I work for. Hello.
Yes, just go off.
Okay, I should go straight to the point. Okay. For purposes of emphasis, I work for Caritas Nigeria. However, what I want to say is just to contribute to what other persons have said, just overflogging the issue. If you want to guarantee food security in our nation, we have a lot of arable lands, but again, it behoves on the government of Nigeria to up her game with policies that can ensure that school leavers who are just graduating from the Faculty of Agric, who have interest in agriculture, are given the opportunity to go into large-scale farming by providing the necessary startup loans and then giving them a kind of insurance guarantee scheme to guarantee their investment. If we don't do that, we'll continue to be saying this thing over and over and will not achieve and attain food security. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk this afternoon. Remain blessed.
You're welcome. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
Who's there? Where?
The blue one. That one.
Yes,
Unmuted. Mr. Joseph, please, you have the floor.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Joe, keep it brief.
Yes, please. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Joseph, keep it brief. You're welcome.
The encyclical is very clear on the area advocacy can be carried out. And I am referring to 14 of the encyclical say that people who deny the problems are not, who are indifferent and all these. I am asking, is it not possible that we can now set up something that can take these group of people that the encyclical have already pointed out and call them obstructionists in number 14, so that the whole activity will not end with what we are doing today. It will continue after this. Thank you.
Sure, it will, Joe. With our collective efforts, it will.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are actually
this lady.
Okay, who is there?
This lady has been putting up her hand. She didn't know how to.
Egefena?
Yes.
Okay.
Timothy then Egefena.
Where's Timothy? Okay, is it that lady? Adeleke or something?
Hello.
Can you mute other people? Mute the other people. Okay, maybe you can, if you can't unmute Timothy, then let's take Egefena. Egefena, her picture, the lady there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Egefena, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon. You have the floor. Keep it brief. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Aluko from APIN Public Health Initiative, Nigeria. Thank you for the opportunity given. We really appreciate. And what I have to say in essence is to just to contribute to what all those people that have read on their presentation, what they have said so far. Climate change is made for everybody, not only one person, for the government and also we and also the partners. So at our own levels, we need to try as much as we could to ensure that things are put in place. For instance, now that the rainy season is coming, make sure that your drainage is clean, make sure that things that are expected of us to do, we're able to do it, so that we're also helping the government, so that the government too, as they do their own part, we all will have a success and a better outcome from what we are trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you make this contribution and join us. To Ibrahim Adeleke.
Yes.
Ibrahim, please speak. Ibrahim Adeleke. Ibrahim Adeleke.
Okay, Ibrahim.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm Ibrahim Adeleke from Ogun State, Ejebode precisely. My question is, of course, I want experience to be shared here that instead of bush burning, is there any proven alternative to land clearing, especially for peasant farmers who could not afford the cost of labor for manual land clearing? And considering the fact that, for example, in the southwestern region of the country, we have more of rainforest vegetation, which practically makes mechanization almost difficult or impossible. So is there any other alternative to bush burning as regarding, of course, we know this contributes to climate action, climate effect, actually. So I'm just asking, is there any alternative that peasant farmer could employ for bush land clearing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. We will just take one more last question and then we wrap up on this session. So who is there? Do we have any? I can see CCM. Where is there? Okay, is that Timothy?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see his name there on the screen.
Please unmute CCM because you've been trying to unmute it.
Yeah, that's. Ben, can you see him? You can see he's trying to talk with his body. Yes, go see him there.
Yeah, okay. Let me just put.
CCMIA.
Yeah.
Yes,
You can go
please.
ahead.
Hello.
Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Please speak on. Just quickly introduce yourself and keep it brief.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Uba Ugweze from CIMAI, Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Initiative, Abuja, an NGO. Yeah, our interest here is the burning issue of food security for the Niger Benue Trough that is known as the food basket of the Nigerian Federation. We know that in the last 1 decade, this very zone has been ravaged by the menace of men. And the population of farmers there are decreasing. And then there are farm losses. And then there is decrease in output. And these things continue to go. And the impact of the herdsmen is continuing southwards. And we know that one of the primary instigation of the herdsmen onslaught is ecological violence. The northern area is losing its lush areas, each lush vegetation, and these people are intent on moving south in order to sustain their cow. So,
okay,
what can be done to
just ask your question? Yes, thank you. Just ask your question.
What can be done? What measures can be put in place to restore the status of the Niger Benue Trough as food basket of Nigeria? Because it is decreasing the availability of food supply to the Nigerian population.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, we will just listen to a few responses and feedback to these questions. It may not be in a very particular order as the questions were asked, but our presenters would make attempts and all participants to give some response. So if we have Dr. John there, Dr. Mokhtar Aminu Kanu, and Father Patrick, if we can have you on there.
I am here. Dr. John is here. Can you hear me?
Okay, Doctor, just keep it brief.
Okay.
Just the question, the ones you can address. Thank you, Doctor.
Let me go to the issue that is burning on everybody's mind, the issue of herdsmen and farmers clashes. As I alluded in my presentation, it's unfortunate we didn't go into detail. What is happening in the northern part of the country, and indeed in the whole Sahel region, even beyond Nigeria, is that because of climate change, the land is becoming uninhabitable, both for human beings and for livestock. You don't have enough vegetation. Even if you plant something, it doesn't grow because the ground has become aridified. It's no longer arable land. On top of that, water is drying up. In Nigeria alone, we have 20 million cattle every single day that must graze, that must feed. We have about 40 million sheep, about 50 million goats that must find something to eat. On top of that, they need about 1 billion liters of water to drink every single day. Those resources are no longer there in the north. So it is forcing them to move downward where you still have some water, you still have some grazing land. Unfortunately, sometimes the food for the livestock is somebody's farm, somebody's agricultural produce. So that leads to clashes. So what do? We need to set up a coordinated, non-political solution. A few solutions have been tried. What we need to do is to have a lot of green reserves and ranches in the northern part of the country and some in the southern part, not completely in one region. And then we also need to look at how we move this cattle. This issue of moving them by land through cities and people's farms is not sustainable and is leading to problems, and it will increase because the cattle population is increasing, the resources are decreasing. So that's how I want to deal with that one. It's a major issue because the resources are not there. And that's one of the threats of climate change. It leads to food insecurity. The people in the north who are grazing cattle, they don't have enough to feed themselves. The cattle doesn't have enough. There's not enough water. So that is going to lead to insecurity. Second thing I want to talk about is the issue of practical deployment of our youth to the farm. I have been a long-time advocate of youth involvement. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was on AIT criticizing the government. They said they want to hire an additional 774,000 people to cope with COVID-19. I said, that sounds crazy to me. Why would you want to give money to hire people? They're not doing anything. We already have a bloated civil service system. Do you use money and deploy them to the farm? It's become self-sufficient. So this to have practical application. A lot of the schools are getting into research to come up with drought and climate change resistant varieties of seeds that you can use.
Thank you, Dr. John Osanwa.
Withstand climate
ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 o'clock, a few minutes after 1. We just want to appeal to you that in another 10 minutes, we are going to be wrapping up. And so please, we just appeal to you to just, can we just have a word or two from other presenters, if there is anything in respect of response to the question? I'm referring to Dr. Mokhtari and
hello, Mr. Moderator. Yes.
Yes, okay. Just quickly, 3 things to take. One is the question about whether Caritas is engaging with other religions and so on. Just to say, not directly to that, but NCF has promoted for us to have an interfaith initiative on environment. And we are working very closely with various leaders, clergy, civil society groups from various faiths within Nigeria. So we'll be very happy to work with Caritas on that. The Archdiocese of Lagos is part of that group, Catholic. So the second question is on ban on plastics. Just to say, before the last elections, the previous seventh National Assembly has introduced a bill to ban plastics, but that didn't pass before the election, so it expired. But just to say, there are a few champions in the National Assembly who are bringing them back. So for the person who asked the question, we are following that. I would be glad to update you on what's happening on that. Then finally, there was a question in the chat box about what could we do to address this structurally instead of doing it individually or collectively. What structural changes need to happen? There are quite a few, but I think one of the ones that's very interesting and I think should be quite resonate very well with Catholics is this whole issue of subsidiarity. I think our environmental governance and stewardship is so much top-down that it is not having an effect. So we need to bring it down. We need to actually actualize this principle of subsidiarity in Catholic social teaching and get communities to take ownership, take leadership, and work to address their environment, because federal or state governments cannot do it alone. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aminu Mokhtari. Like we said earlier, we will be we'll be looking out to further collaboration with the Nigerian Conservation. Father Patrick, do you have something to say or we move on? Yes, Father.
Yes. I would simply want to end by making an appeal. The appeal that will remind all of us that the existence of a structure called Justice and Peace was in an effort by the Vatican to seek for structural response to structural injustice, to structural sin. Any issue that is critical, whether you are talking about farm system, whether you are talking about the relationship between herders and farmers, whether you are talking about plastic and use, whether you are talking about advocacy, anything that is important, seek a policy, a public policy. That means, as Joe has put it to us, we need to put in place mechanism to influence public policies, to do advocacy. And the Pope Francis has told us right from the Laudato Si, he appealed to the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew. The Pope Francis has mentioned so many texts from other churches that support the ecological conversion. Once again, I hope the director of the Catholic Secretariat is listening, all the other coordinators are listening. Any issue that is important, that require enduring, sustainable solution must be gone down into a public policy. And the way to do it is public advocacy through research and development, through think tank at every level. Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, and everybody else.
Thank you, Father Patrick. Your points are well noted. You have spoken from the background of a JDPC propelling factor, and we will key into that to ensure that we do the needful. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we have just 3 brief items to round up this conference. I would like to, at this juncture, invite Nkese to quickly do a summary of what has gone on through here in 2-3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you for to the speakers and to all participants for the active participation. We are indeed very thrilled that so many people logged on and contributed to this Laudato Si anniversary, 5th anniversary celebration that has to do with the environment, how to nurture our Mother Earth. So from a brief of what has been discussed, Father Patrick started by talking about the ecological conversion to integral ecology, which is the theme of what the Vatican is celebrating this week. How we can actually ensure that the ecology which has been devastated through human activity is actually brought back to what it was intended to be by God, so that it can support all the biodiversity, including human beings. So he rounded up by talking about that the true ecological approach is always by integrating a social approach which is inclusive of the poor. So just as Laudato Si has brought us, has called us to ensure that there is a lifestyle change by everyone. And then we looked at the, we talked about the environmental, social, economic causes of climate change, inclusive of which also includes migration movement. We talked about the 5 R's of the innovation in order to fix the earth. So to fix the earth, there are 5 R's that Father Patrick mentioned, which is to reduce, refuse, reuse, recover, and recycle. We also talked about all the JDPCs adopting innovative measures to reach the grassroots, as well as setting up think tanks in all dioceses, which cuts across all the states, so as to promote the essence of the Laudato Si and ecological conversion. Then Dr. Mutari talked about climate change and pollution. He talked about the effect of climate change on air, on water, which has led to a lot of pollution, resulting in sicknesses and infectious diseases such as Lassa fever, malaria, dengue fever, swine flu, and all this is fostered by poor environmental habits, which has encouraged the growth and presence of rodents, pests, bacteria, and even the proliferation of viruses, which has led to a lot of sicknesses amongst us. We also talked about how this climate change has led to animals activities, human activities, which has led to desertification, which has made animals to leave their natural habitats and to be more closely in contact with human beings, thereby bringing about some of these diseases. He talked about pollution, which has led to the rise in sea level and the pH of, that's the acidity level of seas, resulting in death of fish, destruction of habitats, as well as some other crises such as the tsunami. Then he tried to talk about the Laudato Si, saying that the Laudato Si actually helps to address climate change, the root of climate change, which is caused by poverty, and says that for any change to take place, we have to look at it from the individual perspective, from the organizational perspective, and from the institutional perspective. And then Dr. Osanwa looked at climate change and food security. And then he mentioned a lot of things that has resulted in food insecurity. He talked about the chronic food insecurity, talked about seasonal food insecurity, and all this has to do with changes in climate. He also talked about the different gases being emitted, which has led to interactions that affect food. He talked about some of the things that we use, such as the vehicles on the road, which has led to the increase in carbon dioxide and our generators. And this has actually increased carbon dioxide as at 2020 by 47%. He talked about methane gas, which is used, which has been greatly increased by up to 70% due to human activities. And then he also talked about the drying up of water resources, especially in the northern Nigeria, which has led to the farmer herders crisis, with the herders bringing their cattle down south, looking for water and greener pastures. And this has led to clashes. And then in some of us talked about, asked questions on how we could ensure that we integrate renewable energy, not just in the church, but also in the different states and organizations where we work in. And so there were answers being brought, answered how most of the energy being used in the Vatican is renewable energy, and how some dioceses and even Caritas Nigeria have tried to, as well as the National Conservation Society, has tried to use some form of renewable energy even in their offices and in their interventions. Then we've talked about how advocacy, setting up advocacies and think tanks, so that we can, as a group, we can work together in synergy, in collaboration, to ensure that we bring about public advocacy, we encourage development, and we set up think tanks, even in our various organizations, and as well as a group, coming together as a group, so that we can push forward a more sustainable environment, and also ensure that we step these things down even to the grassroots through subsidiarity. Thank you. I hope I've been able to capture as much as possible.
Yes, you've actually done justice to this bit of assignment. Thank you, Nkese, for giving us a summary of the perspective of what we've done this morning through afternoon. The very last item on our agenda is the communique. Let me quickly invite Cecilia Agrinya-Owan, who has been able to communicate with us on the most appropriate way on how she wants to handle this, so that we can all have a buy-in and contribute to it. Cecilia, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you to all our speakers and our participants for tuning in. We really appreciate your enormous contributions. And like the moderator rightly said, I'm handling the communique. But the way I want us to do it is for everyone to contribute to this community. We want our voices to be heard. So would like each participant to give us 2 points you'd like to see in the communique. While during Dr. Tari's presentation, he mentioned that the commitment we have to take needs to be 3 folds, 3 layers. Commitment as an individual, as an organization, as government, or a structural commitment. So I want each participant to come up with 2 points. You can decide which of the commitment level you want to contribute to, either as an individual, an organization, or government level. Send us 2 points you'd like to say in the community. But this will not be email because we don't have time anymore. We had wanted to take that during the presentations or during the session, but we don't really have time anymore. So we welcome your email, but please, let's have everything in today. After today, we will not be able to feature people's commitments in the community anymore because we would like to have the community ready by today. So thank you very much.
Look into the camera.
Okay, thank you very much, Cecilia Agrinya-Owen. Yes, she has just made a summary that she will want collective input to be able to come up with an acceptable resolution from the community. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, we are wrapping up for the day, and appropriately, we will pay tribute to our presenters, our keynote presenters, but let me hand you over to the executive director who would like to say a word or two and pay tribute to those that have actually made this conference very historic in its nature and in its true perspective. Very Reverend Father Dr. Uchechukwu Obodiochina, you have the floor, Father.
Once again, dear friends, I thank you for your invaluable contributions. It has been heartwarming that we're able to do a lot of conversations on the area of climate and climate change and our individuals to corporate responsibilities about our environment. We are grateful to you for your contributions. And we are making you a promise that your contributions will certainly, in one form or the other, influence going forward some of our processes. That will be a way we would like to landmark this anniversary and then show also some level of collaboration with some other organizations. At this point, it has become very evident that there is no one single organization that will be able to live up to the entire expectations and respond adequately to the demands of the environment. And that is why it calls for extensive and intensive collaborations among partners. We will do our best to enhance this aspect going forward. Finally, it has worth the while that today we were able to meet. Even though we are physically distant from one another, we have been socially integrated. May this day bear more fruits in the various works we do in our various domains of authority. May it also create a greater awareness about our responsibility towards the environment. And may our efforts not be in vain. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Father. Would you please like to do the closing prayer so that we can formally close for the day?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty Father, we thank you for being with us. Without you, we can do nothing. Kindly prosper the work of our hands through Christ our Lord. Amen. Almighty God, bless and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. The peace be upon all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please remember to send in, just as we type out, we send in 2 commitments each, every participant, so that your point of views can be captured. Thank you. Have a lovely
Thank you for your participation. Could you just wave? Can we see your hands? Your hands. Thank you. Your hands. Left hand. Bye.